Welcome to the Ali Maz Show, where we focus on human being and spiritual living with a deep inclination for the divine. Together, we delve into the seen and the unseen, and we explore what it means to be well and whole from the inside out. Over the last 17 years, I've been focused on how movement, breath, and the power of the mind can liberate us from the template of our conditioning and carve a path to live a truly authentic life. My hope is that my guests will inspire and expand you to continue to choose the life that is yours. Today's guest is Malia Manuel. Malia is a Hawaiian professional surfer from the island of Kauai. Her journey as a professional surfer began at a young age. In 2008, she became the youngest surfer, male or female, to win the U.S. Open of Surfing, solidifying her reputation as a rising star. Malia's story is a testament to the indomitable spirit of Hawaii and its people. She carries the legacy of her Hawaiian ancestors with humility and grace. As a professional surfer and a cultural ambassador, she embodies the essence of what it means to be a true water woman, making her family, her community, and the entire Hawaiian Islands proud. Welcome to the podcast, Malia. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Ali. I'm so happy to be here, and that was a wonderful, beautiful intro.
Thank you. It takes me like, I'm like, I don't want to mess this up. I guess where I want to start is maybe how we met. I was trying to think of how long ago that was. I know it was likely like almost, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe longer, in Vancouver at my yoga studio. And Malia was brought through a mutual friend through Lululemon to a Girlvana yoga class. That's the first time, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And
shout out to Boz.
Yeah. And what really struck me, I mean, obviously with that intro, you're such an incredible professional athlete at the top of your game. And I felt so moved that you would just take the time or even have the desire to come and to my little yoga studio in Vancouver and sit and be at a yoga class with teenagers. And I know that we really share a similar passion and heart for being role models or mentors for young girls. And I just have that memory. It's so fond. And we've had the opportunity to collaborate again with teenagers. And so I'm curious, what were you like as a teenager?
Oh, I think I was a bit awkward. I think I had a very different teenage life than your normal. I started competing in surfing at a very young age, and I think that really dictated how my teenage years went. And, with surfing, your career is based off of opinions. And so that was really interesting to grow through my teenage years, trying to figure out who I am and also having a career based off how I surf, how I look, and how I perform. So I think, I know a lot of people can relate to that as well, but I think for my teenage years, it was really interesting to grow up. I feel like I had to mature and grow up and go through a lot of ups and downs, more so than your average teenager.
Because you were how old when you won the U.S. Open? 14?
I was 14. Yes, yeah. I was 14. I started competing around 8, just for fun. And then it kind of domino affected into a bunch of different opportunities. So I continued on and I just actually evolved away from competing after all these years.
Wow. And what is that feeling like in this next sort of new chapter of your life when you're not competing?
I still feel like I'm trying to figure it out. I think I go through different phases where I feel like I'm extremely happy. I know that I'm a lot less stressed, which is a great thing. But it's just trying to find that balance again and like recalibrating how I spend my days, because every day was kind of catered towards how I can perform better as a person and as an athlete. And, with all the different components of wellness, I was just highly fixated on anything that I could do to get better, to improve my craft. And so just kind of recalibrating and finding that balance between working hard and staying healthy for what I love to do, but not overworking and over, stressing my body and mind like I probably have during that time.
Yeah. I relate to that. I used to be a competitive dancer, and when I stopped competing, it felt like a death on some level, or like grieving this piece of myself. And I think similar to surfing and with dance, like you said, it's opinion based. It's not as cut and dry as like you scored a goal and you won. It has a little bit more to do. It's quite subjective. And I think especially as a young person, I mean, you're still young, to constantly be grappling with what everyone else thinks of you, and then trying to understand and get to the core of, well, what do I think of myself? And without all of these accolades or winning or being on the world stage, who am I without those things? And I'm curious, sort of, that piece was a big piece of your identity, I'm sure. And so as you I know you're doing so many other things, and you're an entrepreneur, and it's just beautiful to watch you grow. But I'm curious, did you feel that little piece of grief, or maybe a big piece of grief?
Absolutely. Yeah, a big piece of grief. I think when I decided to transition away from competing, I had a lot of other personal things happening at the same time, kind of just when it rains, it pours. And so I had a lot to recalibrate within my heart and physically and mentally. And then, I mean, everything in life is a work in progress. So I'm still continuing on that journey, but there is definitely a lot to go through and a lot of grief for sure.
Yeah.
And when I first met you all those years ago, I was like, wow, I've admired you from the moment I met you. And at Girlvana, at your studio, I was just so excited for these girls to have the opportunity to share space with you, because when I was growing up and competing and going through all that I went through, I was like, wow, I really wish I had Allie with me during these times. And ever since that first moment in your yoga studio with all the teenage girls, I just have admired you so much, and I just wanted to circle back to that first moment we met, because it really changed how I look at things and how I approach speaking to other women as well.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think Girlvana strikes such a chord with people because we look at it as like, I wish I had that when I was that age. And I mean, it's why I created it. Is I wish that at 14, I was able to have conversations about my physical, mental, and emotional health. For me, that came so much later in my life. And it came from a place of, hitting my knees many times in my physical, mental, emotional health. And I know these things are so important to you, and I see you working out and doing all these things, and I also know that you have a deep spiritual connection to the land. And so I wondered if we could speak a little bit about Hawaii. And I know that you have, I think it's 4 generations on Kauai, and I'd love to hear it in your own words, your connection to the land and to the ocean and to the water, and what being a water woman means to you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. I think I'm still learning so much about my culture now. I think I've been so distracted and fixated on my sport that now that I've evolved away from focusing on competing, I'm actually really reconnecting now to my culture, and for me that's in the form of hula and practicing the art of dance, because that is how my previous generations used to tell stories through dance. So that's been really fun in the last couple of years. And, Kauai has just shaped me as a person and as a surfer, from the energy of being in the mountains and hiking and exploring in nature, to being in the ocean and learning about just the changing of tides and the energy that you're riding something that's been created so miles and miles out in the sea, and you're riding like that last bit of energy. There's a lot to appreciate and acknowledge when you're in the ocean as well. And so I'm so truly thankful to be part of a multi-generation of Hawaiians on the island of Kauai. And, I have so much respect and love for where I grew up and my community, and who I get to see in the ocean, and, share that love and passion for surfing.
I am a bad surfer, but I love it. And I'm constantly learning. I just got back from Panama. I was there for the month leading a yoga teacher training and a women's retreat. And as part of it, we do surf lessons. And I think so much about what I love about kind of the similarities between yoga and surfing is this idea that we have to release our ego and we have to give up control, because we're not in control of what the waves are going to do, just as much as we are not in control of what life is going to do. All we really can control is how we respond to life. And I'm curious how that philosophy, because it's so deeply ingrained in you, what that looks like in your life now. You know, what surfing has taught you to prepare you for this stage of life, which might mean like less surfing or less competing.
Right. I mean, it's funny because, you look at surfing and you're like, wow, I have no control, but then you also can kind of simplify and say, wow, I can give myself the best opportunity by being in control of certain things that can support the unstable and like non-consistency that comes with Mother Nature and surfing. So I think you know, you can create a product from consistent practice. And I think that can kind of relate into anything, whether it's surfing or life or your yoga practice. Every day is different, but if you consistently show up for yourself for, you know, what it means for you and like why you continue to wake up and do the thing that you do, it's exciting. I think it brings some excitement and strength in other different ways, is how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're someone who is so disciplined, and I'm sure that just because you're not competing, I'm sure that discipline still carries through your day to day. I'm curious what practices are in your life right now, whether what types of movement or mindfulness practices that are helping keeping you grounded right now.
That's a good question. I think for me, I am trying to practice the art of slowing down. I think that has been consistently something that I've always tried to work on. I think as an athlete and many athletes, we get so fixated on something. Like for competing, it's like you compete, and whether you get the result or not, you're fixated on the next thing. And that could be the next weekend or the next contest. And you really don't enjoy, or for me, I haven't really enjoyed some of the places that I've been, and I've been to some incredible places. But once that event's over, I just start to fixate on the next thing. That's a common thing that happens with surfers. And so it's really an art, and a very big reminder for myself is the act of slowing down. And I used to do it like a lot of running and training and cardio, and I go through phases now, and I'm practicing knowing that it's okay to go through phases, just like the seasons of change in nature and how we go through different cycles, and just being okay with that. And for me right now, I'm after that kind of transition away from competing, I definitely took some time off from surfing and overtraining, and kind of realized slowing down and kind of acknowledging where I'm at and where I want to head, and focus on different things as far as my physical strength, because I needed to, because I had to, for this certain thing that I wanted on a trophy or points or accolades. So right now I'm definitely trying to slow down and enjoy my time at home, and surf for fun, and enjoy my friends that I've only seen, a few times a year because I'm never home. And so kind of that's where I'm at as far as movement and yeah.
I love this idea of, I think we all need to learn how to slow down. And I think specifically in a female body, because our, like you spoke to the cycles of nature, where we see constantly rebirth and in decay and everywhere in between. And nature, to me anyways, I'm sure for you too, is the greatest teacher. And there's a season for everything. And in particular of how we train and move our bodies as women, we're on a 28-day cycle, a hormonal cycle, which mimics the cycle of the moon, whereas men are on a 24-hour cycle, which mimics the cycle of the sun. And so I would think even in the way likely so many of us are training, especially athletes, we're training like men. We're training like that's sort of the blueprint for so many things. And so how we actually as women honor our bodies where we likely do need more rest at certain times of the month, or we just do need to train and slow things down. And so I think it's really inspiring to hear you sort of look at the relationship with training in your body in a different way, where so much for athletes, and I certainly felt this as a dancer, it was all about the outcome and not really what my body needed on a day-to-day basis. And so yeah, curious of what sort of that process has been like for you to be really listening to your body. And is that new for you to really listen, or was it something that was maybe instilled in you at a younger age?
No, it's completely new. I think for me, it's funny you brought up with our 28-day cycles and how we move our bodies during those times. Because I'm consistently going back to this little chart on my phone and like figuring out where I'm at. I'm like, okay, like I'm going to sign up for Pilates this week and I'm going to do hit this, or yoga, or take it easy. So it's funny you say that, because that is something that I've actually took the time to realize, and honestly probably didn't want to realize when I was competing, because it probably mentally would distract me, because I just always had to be on for most of the year. And so, with competing in the sport, they don't really wait for you. So you just really have to commit and be disciplined and not really let those types of things affect you. So it's been really fun to have the privilege and the time to reconnect with my body and still continue all the good habits that I've consistently learned throughout my career as well.
Yeah. And what has the response been like since you've made the decision to stop competing? Like maybe A, from your family and your friends that likely get to see you more, and then B, from, your fans in this community that has sort of watched you throughout all of these years.
Yeah, it's funny because I really haven't talked about it much. I think there's still some wonder if I'm going to compete again or where I'm at. And I kind of really haven't publicly talked about it very much. So this is new to be.
I know, because as you were saying this, I was like, did I miss something? I feel like I didn't see this online. So you're hearing it here first. Wow. I feel very honored to have this conversation. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, I think everyone close to me is very understanding. And I think the transition has been a little bit easier for me because I am so passionate about so many things outside of surfing. And so for me, knowing that a career is pretty short-lived for a woman in surfing as far as how you want to carry on in different phases of your life. And so knowing that I wouldn't be on tour competing forever, I've kind of worked towards different projects and things that I want to pursue outside of just a competitive surfer. And lucky for me, I've always found I've never really defined myself as just this person on the tour, which is very lucky. I think I've had the honor to have that mentality. I know some people are still just in a different thought process. But I think through sponsors and support from people outside of surfing, that's been very helpful in my transition. And I think everyone around me really understands. And I think some people probably, I do get people saying, oh, we miss you on tour and this and that. But they have to know I'm a lot less stressed and I'm extremely happy. And I'm still, traveling and trying to take advantage of where I'm at in my physical ability still. Like I really want to surf these waves while I still can, and while I'm healthy and not be constricted to a time frame at these waves where, I only have 30 minutes and I need to just get these two best waves. So I've been enjoying, traveling to some of my favorite places that I've been and new places, and really just enjoying my health and my ability in other places, because deep down I'm still a true surfer and I have, places that I want to go and enjoy.
If as you were speaking, it felt like this, in my body, I felt like this deep sense of relief almost in a way. And this idea of you, like you said, yeah, just like being on these waves for the enjoyment and not having it be this big pressureful thing, and doing it. And I just feel like there's so many parallels for me here too. When I stopped dancing, for me, I had to find ways to find the enjoyment again, actually, in dance, and kind of strip it away from this being a career and, you know, my life at auditions and rehearsals, etc., to where can I find the joy again? Because there is this little person in me that came to dance because she just loved to dance, and it wasn't
Of
about
course.
winning, and it wasn't about what it looked like. And then refinding the passion for that, and then really starting to dig into what else am I so passionate about that I haven't had the time or the energy to explore. And I'm curious what those things look like for you.
Yeah, so the past couple of years, one of my best friends at home here and I started a small business called the Sculpt Co, and it's all tailored around eco-friendly fitness accessories. So that has been extremely fun to pursue and co-create. And it's been fun to see the support that the community here in Hawaii has given us. And yeah, it's been fun to complement everyone's wellness journey, whether, you know, we're all athletes in a certain sense, whether you run a mile or you run 10 miles. And so we kind of created this small business, this company, to help complement wherever you're at in your wellness journey. So it really tailors to your goals of strength or for recovery. So it's been really, really fun and such a creative outlet for me. I love design and I love, you know, art and aesthetics. And so that's been like such a great opportunity for me to focus on something else that I'm passionate about, but also being able to help a broader community in the wellness and fitness.
I love that. The products look so cool. And every time I see you using them or working out, I'm like, I want to come work out with Malia. Um, so for you, what was the sort of impetus in creating the product? Like, did you see a need in the market? Was it something that you had envisioned for years? Like what was sort of the inception of creating Sculpt?
Yeah, so our main product is an eco-friendly sweatband for your waist. And so for me, I've always loved perspiring and being from a humid community. When I'm traveling, I felt like I didn't really get that fulfillment from a really good workout and perspiring. And same with Candace, who is the co-founder of Sculpco. She would travel with me sometimes on surf trips, and when we work out, we were just kind of, wow, we're really not as fulfilled as when we work out at home. And there were other waistbands on the market. But being surfers, our angle was sourcing the best natural material for your waist. And so our products are eco-friendly because they're made with limestone neoprene, which is a high quality and more eco-friendly production of a wetsuit. And so being surfers, we kind of had this like, oh, well, why don't we just take our wetsuit top that we wear every day and kind of just tailor it to when we're on land and, you know, kind of get that fulfillment and, you know, that satisfactory of a really good workout.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to try one. I'm curious how, you know, I think what we see so much sort of in the surf world and basically every industry is that we really let men be sort of men in a lot of sports, but with women in sport, there's a certain, it's like, be really great, but also be super hot, sexy, like, you know, there's more sort of emphasis, I think, in the sports world, especially in the surf world, where on body or on looks. And I'm curious how you dealt with that, because even when I look at videos or things that are on YouTube, it's like, oh, she's a great surfer. Oh, but she's really hot, or like that girl can actually surf. And it's just this sort of connotation that kind of gets stuck on. So I'm curious about your relationship with your own body. And I know we've talked about this before, and it's a big piece of the work that I do, especially with young women, of the relationship to body, when, you know, it's hard enough to deal with our own body image, but when you're, again, on the world stage, you have all of these Instagram followers, people are looking at you and making comments. How have you sort of reclaimed that for yourself too? Now you're creating products for wellness and fitness. And so I'm just sort of curious of that kind of pendulum for you.
Yeah, well, I think I've had a hard time with my relationship to my physical appearance. I think growing up and wanting to be this strong surfer that surfed really well, I think there is that factor taken into consideration when training and, refueling. And then there's this factor of I'm in a bikini for my career. And I have these opinions, and being a woman, and sometimes even with sponsors, it's about how you look, unfortunately. That's not a secret. So it's been really difficult, I think, growing up. But for me, I think being so passionate about my sport and wanting to get better at my craft really helped me. I think, having a passion that is just beyond a physical appearance, and having that reminder when you work out and train, it's something so beyond the result or the appearance. I think it's more about internally and how you feel. And it's really difficult. I get distracted all the time, and I'm 30 years old and I still, have those ups and downs of, okay, what makes me feel good? Oh, versus what's my mind telling me this is going to make me or feel good or look good. But I'm just really thankful. I have tried to keep kind of my life private in a sense too, and just kind of focus on being the best surfer I could be. I think that really helped me, because with social media now and everything, everyone has an opinion of how you should eat or how you should train or how you should look. It's so difficult, and I still struggle with it too.
Sure. I think we all do. I think it's how we use these tools. And I'm curious about the way intuition plays in your life, and intuition around how you move your body, what you choose to eat, intuition even about these next steps in your life. What's your relationship to intuition?
That's one of my favorite words, because I think just being like circling back to being in the ocean and in nature, you're really having to stay, there's not much talking that happens. You're really more silent in the ocean, and you're kind of adapting to all the changes of Mother Nature. And intuition comes from having a clear mind for me. And whether that's, in your personal life can affect, your sport and everything. And so, having a clear mind and always kind of trying to circle back to awareness and check-ins with yourself, because that kind of has that ripple effect into, making good decisions and acting upon intuition, in personal life and in a career like surfing. And so for me, intuition is huge. And that comes from having a clear mind and always having like self check-ins, and really trying to reconnect with what my body needs at the moment. And that's kind of an ever going process, with our busy lives. And sometimes I create distractions, or I want to be busier because I don't want to deal with whatever I have to deal with. So I kind of get in that cycle sometimes too, where I'm overworking out, and I'm, like over tiring myself and my mind and my body, because I don't want to reconnect and actually, kind of slow down and be, oh, you're right, intuition. I'm trying to block it out, but I need to circle back to it.
Totally. I sort of put it in two categories. We either run or we numb when we don't want to feel something. And I think a lot of us know what we put under those categories. Like, to me, running is like maybe quite literally running or over exercising or just staying super busy. And numbing, when we don't want to feel, can come through, like the doom scrolling on social media, or, episode after episode of Netflix, or drinking, or drugs or whatever. Everyone has their sort of
course.
vice or their thing. And it's really, and I do it too. I mean, when I got back from Panama, I find I do it a lot when I come back from these big experiences and I'm like not ready to process yet, then I'm just like, I'm just going to stay busy and do all these things until my body slows me down. And that's always my thing is like, I just get sick. My body's like, now you have a head cold because you're not listening. Or, the body has this barometer, right, where it'll tell you, okay, you're not listening. I'm going to whisper to you and then I'm going to get louder and then I'm going to hit you upside the head until you're ready. So, all of us have intuition. It's not just for some, it's everyone has it, and our ability to listen to it. And I just really appreciate you saying that because it's not always easy to listen to our intuition or say you listen to intuition, but to actually act is a whole other piece that takes so much bravery. So you could be hearing like, oh, okay, the intuition saying, I want to stop competing, but you could go on like 5 more years still competing. So it's one thing to know it and it's another thing to act.
Absolutely true. You're totally right.
Yeah. And I think that when we act, it's like, I talk about this a lot too. And a lot of my guests on the podcast have sort of said something similar. Sometimes when we act on our intuition, we could disappoint others. It's maybe not what people want. And I'm curious if you have any experience with that when you've really chosen yourself or chosen something for you and it maybe has let other people down.
Yeah, I definitely have experience with that. I think multiple experiences with that. Kind of enabling just the yes, 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 yes when you should say no. I think that also is one of the hardest things to do because you fear letting people down. And that's a big fear for me because of my career and wanting to please, the opinion of how I advance on into surfing and in events. I have like that mindset of like, well, I need to impress these judges that are going to write these scores down so that I can continue on in my competition. So there's that like mindset of like trying to please and just continuing on, and it's kind of snowball effects. And so in that actually in surfing has translated into my personal life where I just kind of say yes, yes, yes to all these things that come up, and sometimes I just don't want to say no because I'm scared and I'm fearful. And so I totally relate, and it totally happens to me to this day where I'm really trying to be okay with the confrontation of saying no. I think that's like a big thing for me. I really don't like confrontation because I just want everything to be still and like beautiful and it's all good, everything go with the flow. But yeah, I'm trying to teach myself to have more confrontation to say no.
Totally. Finding your voice in that. And, when we say no to someone else, often it's the saying yes to ourselves. Like on some level, you said, okay, yes to me and what I want. And it might mean a no for someone else. And I think I certainly relate to that. And I think just as women and as girls, we're sort of conditioned to be people pleasing and to be yes people and to go with the flow and to not create any upset or kind of rock the boat. And so when a woman has an opinion, this is certainly what I've witnessed, and especially as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, I find that when a woman has an opinion, it can come across like, it's like, ooh, whoa, okay, versus when a man has an opinion,
she's difficult.
She's difficult. She's a bitch. She's this, she's that. Yeah. Versus when a man has an opinion, it's just like, he's just speaking and everyone's like, yeah, okay. And so I think it's finding your voice and finding your no. It's just, it takes practice. It's like so much practice. And sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. But I think the older I get, when I say yes to something I don't want to do, it's like, it feels like a betrayal now to myself. It feels like I let myself down and I want to stop doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to really, really uphold myself, uphold my energy, and really allow myself to like have the things that I want. And for me, I'm I might present quite extroverted, but I'm really introverted. Like I get my charge from being alone, which means I have to say no a lot to things.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I totally agree. And, I think that's the fun thing about getting older. You kind of have this like easier time, circling back to what's like best for you and who you want to spend your time with and how, and, creating those like healthy habits and your, like your internal environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, the internal environment, the cultivation of the internal environment. I think like when I was, in my 20s, I don't even think I knew what that meant. Like, what do you mean internal environment? I just lived my life for everyone else. And I was,
Yeah.
a dancer and a competitive dancer. You're a performer. And so you just sort of learn how to put a mask on. And I'm sure probably for you too, on tours and doing all these things where you're so front facing, where you kind of have to be like smiling and everything is fine all the time. And when you start to tend to the internal landscape, like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I needing? And what am I ignoring? And it starts to accumulate to a point where, sometimes we break physically, mentally, emotionally.
Absolutely. And I think for me, movement is a big part of my life for that reason. Because I think when I, do, let's say, strength training, and I'm like, wow, that was really difficult in the moment. And then afterwards, I feel of like this better sense of self and like this like confidence in myself. And I think that's also a big factor within is like having that inner confidence to, create for yourself and your.
Yeah, it's like an embodiment. I find after I move my body, I'm like, oh, I'm actually occupying myself versus when you're not moving, we just tend to live upstairs in our mind and we start taking our minds really seriously and believing everything we're saying and thinking. And, I still have those days. And then I just go, do a practice or even go for a walk or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I just needed to move. And I think that's something we forget that. Or I'm like, why am I so depressed and so down today? It's like, oh, I haven't moved my body or I didn't eat breakfast. And it's always just the simplest things.
Exactly.
What kind of movement right now is lighting you up?
For me right now, I'm really loving yoga sculpt. I've actually been teaching a bit of athletic sculpt. It's kind of like my version of yoga sculpt here on Kauai at a local yoga studio. And for me, I get really nervous like the night before. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure my alarm's on and I have my playlist ready and I like can't be late because I'm gonna like let this whole class down if I don't show up. But once I'm there and I get the music going and everyone's moving in sync, like that to me, I've found just recently from teaching is the most incredible thing. When people are moving in sync and you're in tune with the cadence of a song and everyone's flowing, it's just like one of the most incredible feelings. And so now I'm just like getting energy from that and a new different type of confidence from teaching yoga sculpt. And for me, it's one of my go-to workouts. It's just something easy that I've always been able to do traveling as well.
Oh, you froze for a second. Okay, you're back.
Hi.
Hi. I love that idea of flow. Like when and I know it because that's part of my life too, is like moving bodies together in a room and the energy that it generates within the room. And I practice alone sometimes too, which I like. There's a moment in a time or a season for that, but being in a space where people are moving, their breath is connecting at the same time. You're feeling and listening to the inhale and sort of this collective release or sigh. And I think now more than ever, especially in a post-pandemic world where we need community, we need to be with people, we need to be breathing and moving and sweating and being together. And I'm curious about the way, like, how community, the role of community has played out in your life, in your career, and now?
Oh, it's huge. I think, especially growing up on such a small island and, surrounded by water, we're all pretty much surfers who just, our day revolves around surfing if it can. But it's actually really beautiful to dive into the yoga and movement community now, that I'm spending more time at home. And it's really beautiful. I think I've never really realized like how strong of a community we have here until just being able to spend more time. I think the more time I spend, the more in awe I am of the community here and in all of Hawaii. Um, but it's amazing. I think there's such an unexplainable strength that comes from community, and I'm so lucky to grow up and be involved in the community here.
I watched this beautiful film that I think your friend made and last year. And is it just called Malia Manuel? I'm not sure. Is it called something?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's just called Malia, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was yeah.
And it's shot, I think, at home in the beautiful island, and just, I mean, we'll link it in the show notes. But I was like brought to tears. Like, it's so beautiful watching the
Thank you.
waterfall and you underwater, and it's just, you can feel the heartbeat and the pulse of this land, and it's just so beautiful. It's truly like the most awe-inspiring footage I
Thank
have
you.
seen. It's so, so, so incredible. What a beautiful place to grow up.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really fun to create. I think that was also such a fun way to transition away from competing because I've always wanted to do a film, um and the goal was to be able to reach abroad and show people how fulfilling a simple life can be, whether it's like a swaying palm or like a texture of the ocean. And so I think Morgan did such a good job at capturing kind of that goal of mine and kind of like less is more. Like I didn't want to have kind of a documentary and be talking and trying to articulate how special of a place Kauai is and the other places that I was honored to travel to. And I just really wanted to visualize like that fulfillment from simplicity. And that was really, yeah, really special to create.
It definitely does exactly that. And I think it felt like a meditation watching it, truly. And my next question is sort of, and I ask all my guests this, and it is really this ineffable kind of hard to put words to, but if you could, explain your relationship to source, or maybe that word is universe or God, or for me it's divine. When I watch a film like that, I think like, you know, there's no doubt there is something greater, because look at the beauty that our earth contains. And I'm curious what that means for you, or your sort of own definition of soul, spirit, creator.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think for me, it's definitely energy and the universe. There's a certain energy that I feel when I'm home. That sense of calm, even just landing from, just landing into the airport here. There's just like a shift in energy for me, and I'm so thankful to grow up in such a beautiful place. Such a privilege to have a vast amount of nature surrounding me and being able to be in the mountains or be in the ocean. I think for me, tapping back into my true self is being in nature. And I think it's such a privilege to grow up somewhere in like this in Hawaii to kind of tap into that energy in the universe.
Yeah, so beautiful. Do you have another place in the world other than Kauai that feels sort of like a soul home? I know you've traveled the world with surf, but curious if there's anywhere else in the world that
We
you're like,
froze.
oh,
Sorry.
oh no, you're okay.
Another place that I absolutely am in love with is Tahiti. And I honestly, it was my first time last year going to Tahiti. I never got to explore that beautiful country until I finished competing. And that's what really was just like, oh wow, there's just like so much to explore, and I've just been so beholden to the schedule. And so for me, stepping foot on Tahiti and in French Polynesia was something just so special. And that might be, some sort of energetic thing because of just the generations of Tahiti and the Tahitians that sailed to Hawaii. Like I think I might have just kind of felt that deeper connection on a generational level. But for me, that place is just so special, and its people and the love they have for simplicity, like here and in Hawaii, is something that's second to none, really. And so I've really enjoyed spending time there. Yeah.
I've never been, and it's definitely on the list. What do you feel like you are most proud of right now in your life in this phase? What sort of when you think of sort of everything that you've accomplished, and now it seems like things are shifting and changing and perhaps coming back to the simplicity. So yes, obviously you can be proud of being the youngest person to do the thing, but away from that, what is really giving you sort of that pride for yourself?
For me, I think the pride in, I've always stayed true to enjoying the journey. And I think that was advice that was given to me at such a young age. And you kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird to think about when you're, younger, but it always stuck with me. And I think I'm most thankful and most prideful for that concept throughout my career, and take it into personal life and professional life and surfing. And so for me, I'm most prideful for really staying true to that, because I really do enjoy the process of all it takes to, look to a stronger future always.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you have many, many more dreams. I feel like this is just the beginning of all the things that you want to create. Is there something that that you're dreaming up right now, or is there something that feels like something that you want to accomplish in the next few years that you're sort of setting your mind to?
I think I have all these little projects happening, and I'm just actually, for once, so thankful I can really focus on being in the moment, because for so long I feel like I've had to, I've known where I had to travel from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. I've just kind of like had this regime and this schedule. And so right now I'm really excited to try to be more in the moment, because I'm able to, and I have the time to really dive into the projects that I'm currently in. So that's actually just so exciting to me, which is kind of the opposite of, like, I'm like, oh, I want to do this and I do want to do that. But I've honestly haven't had time to just kind of recenter and like spend time at home. And for me, that's just like so exciting and so important to me, because I just love being here and kind of just growing, our small business, and tapping into, staying healthy and inspiring everyone in their wellness journey. But honestly, like big picture, I'm just so happy to try to spend more time being in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. My teacher always says, like, what time is it? I'm like, it's now, because it's always now. Like, that's what the time is,
Yeah.
always right now. And I think we get so caught up kind of, in both spaces, especially you who, where your year had been planned out for you before you even step foot into January 1st. And so to have all this space and all of this time, and we lose so much time future tripping, and imagining ourselves in the next location and the next thing. And there's just so much beauty, and there's so much time in the now, when I really allow myself to slow down and be present. I have a little lull in my travel schedule right now. And even though the days are short because it's winter, I'm still like, wow, there's so many hours in a day. when I'm not, killing myself traveling and being busy and, with the groups, etc. When I'm home, I'm like, oh, there's so much beauty in just this, like this day. And I have this little hammock outside my place. We currently live in LA. And I just look up at this tree and just watch the trees sort of blow. And I'm like, this is the best thing I could do today. I can't imagine a more worthwhile
Right.
practice than staring at this
Right.
tree for an hour. And, but that took a lot of sort of deprogramming for me to really
Totally.
allow myself to just
It's
have
hard to do.
that moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to do, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
And
why
here,
I'm just so proud to be centered and home.
yeah. Yeah.
I really would love to have a Lady Vana retreat with you and take some women
Oh my
surfing. I think
gosh.
that's something that would be fun to look forward to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Again, you've heard it here first. We've had many firsts in this podcast today, but that would be such a dream come true. And what I love about with Lady Vana bringing people together in these beautiful destinations, but having surf be a part of it. And, you know, there's nothing, I don't know, I've been doing retreats for so long and many different experiences. You know, we do sweat lodges in Mexico, the Temescal, or we, you know, go and do all these fun adventures. But there's something about surf where people's eyes change. Like they get out of the water and I'm like, you're a different person, and the way it lights them up and almost creates like, it's addiction is the wrong word, but people are like, when do we get to go again? And just, I don't know, it really adds to this experience too of shedding layers, releasing the ego, being humble, letting go, not being in control, failing really, I think is what surfing has taught me most, is like, especially when you're a beginner, you're failing constantly and being okay with that and getting back on the board. And those parallels are so beautiful, and it just makes for such a beautiful relationship as we dive into this deep unraveling of inner work. And then you go surf. It's like the deepest release possible.
Totally. I totally agree. I think there are so many different parallels to relate with surfing and being in the ocean to whatever and wherever you are in your life.
Yeah, totally. And like I told you, I'm still a very novice surfer, and, you know, very much learning. Is there anything in your life that you are learning right now that you're like maybe bad at, or, you know, is not coming as easy as maybe surf does for you?
Oh my gosh, a lot of things, like everything besides surfing and working out. Really, yeah, I mean, like circling back to, you know, practicing hula, I think, you know, I've grown up watching Merry Monarch, which is a huge festival on the Big Island every year. And it's just, I'm in awe of like how our bodies can move. And so for me, that's something new and exciting and kind of scary, you know, and I'm trying to video myself like, oh, definitely not moving how I should be moving. So for me, that's it's dance for sure.
I love that.
There's just nothing of me dancing hula on the internet yet because it's just a thing.
I love that. And that's why no one's seen a video of me surfing yet, because I get out of the water thinking, wow, I really crushed that. Those waves are really big. And then I got on the beach and I'm like, oh no, they're not. That was just like, you know, a 2-foot wave. But I felt, you know, like I felt like I really did something there. But I think it's so important for us to challenge ourselves. And it's so important for us to get outside of our comfort zone and try something new. And I think as the older we get to, we sort of lose that. I think we're afraid to look stupid. And I'm sure for you, people, you know, people know who you are. And, you know, I'm certainly when you're at home and then you're doing something that you're maybe beginner at, it's like, like I said, it's like an ego thing where you just have to let it go and just be okay with failing and looking stupid.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. That's why I don't play. My friends make fun of me because I don't like to play like board games because I don't want to lose. I'm like, no, I'll pass on that, like Monopoly, whatever. Like, just count me out because I just don't even want to give myself a chance to lose. And hello, ego
I know.
knocking.
The competitor in me is still very strong too, and it does come out with board games. I have to say, like, my husband is like, calm down, like you're so aggressive. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's just that little competitive one in me that wants to do it right. And yeah, the losing and being humbled and looking stupid, I actually think it's become a way more powerful practice to me. And the releasing of perfectionism and not always getting it right. And I think that this comes for all athletes or anyone that's done anything competitively. Perfectionism is it's like an addiction. It's like a drug.
Totally.
Yes. How has perfectionism, are you deprogramming some of your perfectionist tendencies? I'm making an assumption, but I just always think that,
Totally.
we're all perfectionists to a certain degree.
Totally. Perfectionism rules my life. And then so I'm definitely slowly trying to deprogram that, like you said, and it's a constant practice. And it's funny because honestly, like surfing, you can never perfect. So, it's something that you'll never be able to master. There's always something new to learn or to create for yourself. It's like, it's art. So it's kind of funny that I have like such a perfectionist ruling over me. But I'm trying to be okay with it. Go with the flow.
Totally. Is there anything that you would like to share for young women? That's where my heart is, and I know for you too, and I know there'll be a lot of teens listening to this podcast, and I'm curious now, as a 30-year-old woman, just some advice or just things that you wish you knew, or just things that they're repeating. I know sometimes our advice sort of tends to feel cliche, but there really are cliches for a reason. So I'm curious some of the advice for the young girls that are listening.
You're right. I mean, a lot of things when you're younger, like this is so cliche to say, but honestly, advice as far as, conditioning positive habits, I think is a huge one for me. And I think that has always been something that I've circled back to and I'm thankful for, is conditioning positive habits. And also, understanding the awareness and consciousness of who you spend your time with and what you do with your time, and having wise decisions on how you go about that, because I think that is really, really important. And as you grow older, you realize like how much people evolve and relationships, and it's okay to disconnect sometimes, and being okay with the ever-changing evolving of a human being. And so choosing time and who you want to surround yourself with wisely.
That's such good advice. And I think I'm still learning that too, like in the evolution of people. I think as I get older, the more I see who's really evolving alongside of me, and then who's not really here for this, because I'm so committed to my own change and evolution. And sometimes people want you to stay the same, or it's more comfortable for them if you're not growing. And being okay, kind of what we were speaking about, sometimes disappointing other people, and what it means to choose yourself. And especially for teens, I think growing up and being at high school or in a small place where you kind of are like stuck with the certain friends that you have, it can be a bit more challenging. But when people aren't supporting you or supporting your growth, you don't have to be friends with them. It feels more intense when you're younger, but the older I get, I just feel I'm like, bye. I don't have time. Yeah. I don't have time.
Right.
And the more you become who you are, and this is always like this cliche thing, like being who you are, but that's the whole point of life, is to discover who you are in your essence and bring that forward. The more you will attract the people who are for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my last question is sort of one around mental health and how we deal with the thoughts in our mind. And I know this is a really big question, but I speak to women a lot around this topic of ending the war within ourselves, or how we actually can find kindness and compassion. And as I said before, like watching those thoughts and choosing something differently. What is your relationship sort of to your own mental health, and what do you do when the mind gets really loud, or when the doubt comes in, or when the perfectionist comes in, or when it's chirping away, it's not enough? movement we've talked about is sort of one, but I'm curious if there's anything
Mhm.
else or anything you say to yourself that allows you to get out of the kind of hamster wheel of the negativity.
Yeah, that's a good question, especially because there is like I do struggle with not being enough often in surfing and personal life. So there's always that sense of okay, circling back to yourself and having that internal confidence and reminding yourself what am I good at and how am I, how can I lead by being like a leader and lead by example. And so I think there's a lot of distraction that happens. But I think, circling back to that like internal confidence within yourself is really huge. And for me, my relationship with my mental health, I kind of have been able to, this can be good or bad, but sometimes I just like I block everything out and I have to like perform. And so for me to open back up takes like a ton of different layers to unfold again because I've added all these layers to try to do this thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And so for me to kind of like dig back into myself takes a lot more time. But, I've definitely had amazing mentors. And I think you're an incredible example of someone who, creates such a good space to open up and talk. I think that's extremely important. And throughout my career, I've had, sports psychologists, and a lot of it has to do with, for me, is like just your personal life reflects in your professional life and your sport. And so, knowing it's, there's everything's connected and there's so many different components to it, and just trying to bring awareness to like where needs more energy. How can I create like this like certain balance because there's so many different components to how you think and how you can get yourself to back into center.
Yeah, and that's really all it is, right? Is coming back home to yourself and recognizing when you're not home,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not in the
Right.
center of yourself and you're living up here in your brain, and how you sort of, I always have this visual of like walking down this staircase from my head back into my heart. And I'll do that with breath where when I really feel like, okay, I'm gone and I'm like way in the past, or I'm like totally in the future of like, how can I bring myself back? And like you said, the sort of compoundedness of like, okay, well, I have to perform, I got to go do this thing, and getting further and further and further away until you sort of lose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of reclaiming of the present moment, being in present time, being conscious in the moment is really step one. But it's not easy. And I think that's why part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast was like to have these conversations of, how do you do it? And what does it look like for you? And then to just dispel a lot of the like, oh, like 5 steps to feeling great. It's like, it doesn't always work
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
There's no kind of quick or easy fix, and everyone sort of has their own journey with it. But it's just such a pleasure to speak with you and to hear, your insights, and also to have this conversation at the precipice of this new chapter for you. And I'm really
Thank
proud
you.
of you and inspired by you and the ways you continue to create. And I'm just so excited to see what comes next.
Thank you. It's so lovely to catch up and chat. And I think it's fun to kind of connect on a broader level and kind of, speak out loud some of the things because I think for me, a lot I've just kind of kept private and internalized because like that's, this little piece of me that I can kind of keep safe. And I think a lot of people think that they know, people, but it's fun to like open up and connect. And, there's so much more to everyone than what meets the eye, really.
Totally. I know I was trying to find like interviews or podcasts where you were just speaking like as you, and they were all very like surf and sport related. And I was like, I want people to really
Mhm.
know Malia because there's such a beautiful, full heart behind all of this
Thank
success. And I
you.
just think that it is so inspiring to see. And this is what I love about women in general, is just our ability our ability to kind of rebirth and be reborn and create anew is sort of, that is our blessing and our gift, is that we're just creators, and we get to just channel all of this beautiful feminine creative energy into what we love. And you're certainly doing that. And I just know that whatever you do inspires and touches the world. And I'm so excited to collaborate. I feel like, yeah, stay tuned. I'm going to stop recording and we're going to have a little business meeting. So thank you, Malia, for your time.
Thank you.
Where can people find Sculpt, or where can people find you? What's the best way for us to stay connected to you?
Yeah, I would love everyone to check out. It's called The Sculpt Co. SCLPT. And you can find us on Instagram, and also myself on Instagram as well. It'd be fun to connect and see how we can complement your wellness journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Malia.
Thank you.